What if I told you that making people like you has nothing to do with being funnier, richer, or better looking? In fact, the people who are most likable use subtle psychological tricks that work on a subconscious level. And today, I'm going to reveal 10 of these tricks that you can start using immediately. But here's the catch. Trick number 7 is so powerful that psychologists warn against using it manipulatively. Let's dive in. Whether you're meeting someone for the first time, try to build better relationships at work, or simply want to be more magnetic in social situations, these psychological principles are backed by science and used by the most charismatic people in the world. The best part? They're simple, they're subtle, and they work almost instantly. The name repetition technique. Dale Carnegie once said that a person's name is the sweetest sound to them in any language. And he was absolutely right. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think just remembering someone's name is enough. It's not. The real trick is weaving their name naturally into conversation. When you use someone's name during a conversation, something fascinating happens in their brain. The medial prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain associated with self-representation, lights up. You're literally making them feel seen and valued on a neurological level. But here's the key. Don't overdo it. Using someone's name once or twice during a conversation feels genuine. Using it 5 times feels like you're reading from a sales manual. Try this. When someone introduces themselves, repeat their name immediately. Nice to meet you, Sarah. Then use it once more during the conversation, and once when you're saying goodbye. It was great talking to you, Sarah. This creates a bookend effect that makes the interaction memorable for both of you. The 2-second delay. This trick sounds counterintuitive, but it's incredibly powerful. When someone finishes speaking, wait 2 full seconds before you respond. That's it. 2 seconds. Here's why this works. In our fast-paced world, most people are just waiting for their turn to talk. They're not actually listening. They're rehearsing what they're going to say next. When you pause for 2 seconds, you accomplish 3 things simultaneously. First, you show that you're actually processing what they said. You're thinking about it, considering it. Second, it makes the other person feel heard and valued. They realize you're not just going through the motions of conversation. And third, it prevents you from interrupting them if they weren't quite finished with their thought. Social psychologists call this active listening, and studies have shown that people who practice it are perceived as more intelligent, more trustworthy, and significantly more likable. The 2-second rule is your shortcut to mastering this skill. One warning, though. If you wait too long, it becomes awkward. 2 to 3 seconds is the sweet spot. Any longer, and people start wondering if you zoned out. The eyebrow flash. You've probably done this without even realizing it, but when you consciously deploy the eyebrow flash, it becomes a secret weapon for instant likability. Here's what it is. When you first see someone, raise your eyebrows quickly for about 1/6 of a second. It's a universal human gesture that signals recognition and friendliness. Anthropologists have observed this behavior across every culture they've studied, from remote Amazonian tribes to Wall Street executives. The eyebrow flash triggers a subconscious response in other people. It signals that you're not a threat and that you're happy to see them. It's a micro-expression that happens so quickly most people don't consciously register it, but their brains absolutely do. When you combine the eyebrow flash with a genuine smile, you create what researchers call a warmth signal. And warmth is actually more important than competence when it comes to first impressions. Princeton researchers found that people form opinions about your warmth in the first milliseconds of meeting you, and those opinions are incredibly hard to change. Practice this in the mirror if you need to. It should feel natural and effortless, not exaggerated. Think of it as the facial expression equivalent of a friendly wave. You're signaling openness and approachability before you even say a word. The matching and mirroring method. This is one of the most well-researched techniques in social psychology, and it's devastatingly effective when done correctly. Matching and mirroring is exactly what it sounds like. You subtly mirror the other person's body language, tone of voice, and even breathing patterns. When they lean in, you lean in. When they cross their legs, you cross your legs a few moments later. When they speak softly, you soften your voice. Why does this work? because humans are hardwired to like people who are similar to us. It's an evolutionary trait that helped our ancestors identify members of their tribe versus potential threats. When someone mirrors our behavior, even unconsciously, our brain interprets this as, this person is like me. This person is safe. This person gets me. Studies have shown that waiters who mirror their customers' behavior receive higher tips. Negotiators who mirror their counterparts reach agreements more quickly. Salespeople who use this technique close more deals. But here's the critical part. It must be subtle. If you mirror someone too obviously or too quickly, it feels mocking and has the opposite effect. Wait about 3 to 5 seconds before matching their posture. Mirror their overall energy level rather than copying every single gesture. Think of it as creating harmony, not being a mime. The genuine compliment twist. Everyone knows that compliments make people feel good, but most compliments are forgettable. Nice shirt or great presentation barely register because people hear them all the time. The psychological trick is to compliment something that required effort or choice rather than something they were born with or something generic. Instead of saying, "You're smart," say the way you explain that complex topic so everyone could understand it was really impressive. Instead of, "You're funny," try the timing on that joke was perfect. You really know how to read a room. Psychologists call these effort-based compliments, and they work better for several reasons. First, they show you're actually paying attention to the specifics of what makes the person special. Second, they reinforce behaviors and skills the person worked hard to develop, which makes them feel genuinely seen. Third, they're much more memorable because they're specific and unique. Here's the twist that makes this technique even more powerful. Deliver the compliment to someone else when the person can overhear it. Psychologists have found that overheard compliments are perceived as more sincere because the person believes you have no reason to lie since you don't think they're listening. It's called the overheard compliment effect, and it can make someone feel incredibly positive toward you instantly. The vulnerability loop. This might be the most counterintuitive trick on this list, but it's backed by solid research. If you want someone to like you quickly, show a small vulnerability early in the interaction. This goes against everything we're taught about making good first impressions. We're told to project confidence, hide our weaknesses, and show our best selves. But researchers have discovered something called the pratfall effect. When competent people make minor mistakes or reveal small flaws, they actually become more likable, not less. Why? Because perfection is intimidating and creates distance. Vulnerability creates connection. When you share something slightly imperfect about yourself, you give others permission to be human too. You lower their guard and create psychological safety. The key word here is small. You're not trauma dumping on someone you just met. You might mention that you got lost on the way here, or that you can never remember whether it's effect, or that you're terrible at remembering to water plants. These tiny admissions of imperfection make you relatable and trustworthy. Social psychologist Brené Brown has built an entire research career on this principle. Her studies show that vulnerability is actually the birthplace of connection, creativity, and change. When you're brave enough to show you're human, others feel drawn to you because they can finally relax and be human too. The Benjamin Franklin effect. This is the trick I mentioned at the beginning, the one psychologists warn about using manipulatively. It's based on a fascinating paradox discovered by Benjamin Franklin himself. Here's the principle. If you want someone to like you, ask them to do you a small favor. This seems backward, right? Shouldn't you do favors for others to make them like you? That works too, but this technique is actually more powerful, and here's why. When someone does you a favor, their brain needs to justify why they helped you. The easiest justification is, I must like this person, otherwise why would I help them? This is called cognitive dissonance resolution. Franklin discovered this when he needed to win over a rival legislator. Instead of trying to impress him, Franklin asked to borrow a rare book from the man's library. The rival sent it. Franklin returned it promptly with a thank you note, and the man became a lifelong friend. Franklin wrote that they became great friends, whereas before they'd never even spoken. Modern psychology has confirmed this works. In one study, researchers had participants complete a task for money. Afterward, one group was asked by the researcher to return the money because it was coming from his personal funds and he couldn't afford it. Those participants later rated the researcher as significantly more likable than participants who weren't asked for the favor. The warning: this only works with small favors, and you must be genuine. Ask someone to hold the door, recommend a restaurant, or explain something they're knowledgeable about. Don't manipulate people into major favors. That's unethical and will backfire spectacularly. The Mood Amplifier. This technique is about strategic emotional alignment, and it's used by therapists, hostage negotiators, and yes, the most likable people you know. Here's how it works. When someone shares something positive, amplify your enthusiasm to match or slightly exceed theirs. When someone shares something negative, validate their feelings without trying to fix the problem immediately. Most people get this exactly wrong. When someone shares good news, we often downplay it or immediately redirect to ourselves. I got a promotion. Oh, that's cool. I remember when I got promoted. When someone shares something negative, we jump to solutions. I'm really stressed about this deadline. Have you tried making a to-do list? Research on active constructive responding shows that how you respond to someone's good news is actually more predictive of relationship quality than how you respond to bad news. When you respond to someone's excitement with genuine, amplified enthusiasm, you associate yourself with their positive emotions. Their brain starts to link you with feeling good. For negative emotions, validation comes first. That deadline sounds really overwhelming is infinitely more connecting than just prioritize your tasks. Once someone feels heard, they'll often naturally move toward problem solving. But if you skip validation and jump to solutions, they feel dismissed. This trick works because it demonstrates emotional intelligence and makes people feel safe sharing with you. And when people feel safe with you, they want to be around you more. The strategic story share. Stories are neurologically impossible to resist. When someone tells you a fact, a couple areas of your brain light up. When someone tells you a story, your entire brain becomes active. This is why the most likable people are often great storytellers. But here's the psychological trick they use. Instead of telling stories to impress people with how interesting or accomplished you are, tell stories that make the listener the hero or that invite them into the narrative. For example, instead of, "I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro last year, and the view from the summit was incredible," try, "Have you ever had one of those moments where you push yourself further than you thought possible?" For me, it was climbing Kilimanjaro. What's been yours? The second version creates connection and invites them into the conversation. The best storytellers also know the power of the callback. This is when you reference something the other person mentioned earlier in the conversation. "You know, that reminds me of what you said about your trip to Japan." This demonstrates that you are listening and that you value their experiences enough to remember and reference them. Researchers in narrative psychology have found that shared storytelling is one of the fastest ways to build rapport and trust. When you tell stories that create space for others rather than dominating with your own experiences, you become someone people genuinely enjoy talking to. The departure impression. Here's something most people don't realize. How you end an interaction is more important than how you begin it. This is because of something called the peak-end rule, a psychological principle discovered by Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman. The peak-end rule states that people judge experiences based primarily on how they felt at the most intense moment, and at the end, not the average of every moment. This means you could have a mediocre conversation for 20 minutes, but if you end it on a high note, that's what the person will remember. So how do you create a strong departure impression? 3 elements. Express genuine appreciation. Be specific about what you enjoyed and suggest future connection. Instead of, "Nice talking to you," try, "I really enjoyed hearing your perspective on remote work culture. We should continue this conversation sometime." The specificity shows you are engaged, and the future suggestion plants the seed that this relationship has potential. There's also a physical component in conversations while they're still going well. Don't wait until things get awkward or you've run out of things to say. Exit on a high note. This creates what psychologists call positive recency, where the last thing someone remembers is wanting more, not wishing it had ended sooner.